So, in the Transformers multiverse, there are countless timelines with countless possibilities attached to them. A single universe can contain splintered timelines, meaning basically a universe can be seen as a tree, and the branches could be alternate timelines for each one. However, when it comes to certain things, some universes are just not explained well. And I believe Rise of the Darkspark, albeit it is seen as one of the worst Transformer games of all time, it actually has some good lore attached to it, being a connection between the Bayverse and the aligned continuity. You see, the Bayverse timeline actually does differ a lot of ways simply because Michael Bay never followed the comics to begin with. And yeah, in all honesty, Rise of the Darkspark could have been the best way for Transformers Prime and the Bayverse to be connected to each other if it was done right. So to start off, let's talk about what makes this timeline different. Obviously, we have a couple characters here. Drift is here. And we do know the other Autobots should exist because of this one line. When Optimus was pretty much, explained to Drift in his chapter why the humans were evacuating, he said that the humans actually made safety protocols in case of another Decepticon attack, meaning this takes place directly after Transformers Dark of the Moon. Now, what's important about this is possibly how how this pretty much went down. Remember, this is a theory, meaning that whatever I say can be set in stone, but it's also a possibility it's not. But considering the Transformers multiverse has infinite possibilities, what I'm saying here could possibly be a canon timeline. Again, infinite timelines, infinite possibilities. As I said before, what ifs are counted as canon. So this is the possible timeline for the Rise of the Darkspark. Now, after Dark of the Moon and after everyone was repaired, I do believe the Autobots would have been celebrated as heroes. Optimus would have sent a distress call into space, and obviously the Autobots that arrived would be Crosshairs, Drift, and Hound. They would have been welcomed in with open arms and scanned their earthbound vehicle modes. All right. Now, again, this takes place during the Age of Extinction timeline, meaning that the government doesn't sever ties with the Autobots, and that Cemetery Wind is actually never formed. However, instead, Nest actually decides to make plans of another Cybertronian invasion. And this is where we get to Rise of the Darkspark. All right, this is where we get to the beginning of it instead here. However, before we really address that, we need to understand what happened in the aligned continuity. What happened in Transformers, War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron. And actually, this part of the story takes place way before Fall of Cybertron happens. Now, what I do think happened is Megatron and his scientists, or Megatron, Shockwave, and Soundwave, would have discovered that there's a high energy reading in the Sea of Rust. Now, Megatron, understandably, would want this as, again, the Darkspark is easily able to give him an edge in the war, and Megatron would then send Starscream, Soundwave, and Shockwave, his most trusted lieutenants, to actually go out and get this. Now, what's important about this here is the Autobots would have also been able to get, hear these communications. And I do think the Autobots would have actually been neck and neck with Soundwave, Shockwave, and Starscream. And now I do think Blaster would be canon to the aligned continuity, as each Transformer actually exists in each universe. I mean, there's never been a Transformer that hasn't existed in any universe before. So, yeah, Blaster, I think, would be able to intercept the communications, or would have intercepted the communications, and relayed this message to Optimus. And Optimus himself would have taken it, upon himself to actually go out there and recover the Darkspark and make sure it doesn't fall into Decepticon hands. However, he would have took other Autobots with him, such as Bumblebee and Jazz. Jazz would have also advised Optimus to take more than just, Autobot Titans and, a couple Marauders. So Jazz would have actually opted for Optimus to take more main Autobots with him, and this would have came in the form of his main buddy, Cliff Jumper, Ironhide, and Sideswipe. So the Autobots would have actually did a divide and conquer strategy where Optimus, Bumblebee, and actually wait out for Sideswipe and Ironhide after they retrieve Darkspark, while Jazz and Cliffjumper actually hold the Decepticons off and actually push them back from the gates of Kaon. Unfortunately, the Combaticons, the literal wreckers of the Decepticons, come in and stop that plan completely. In all honesty, it's understandable. They didn't bring their own combiner. Or even, heck, they actually did have a combiner. I forgot Defensor was canon. And this would lead to the rest of the game where Optimus and Jazz go to, save Cliffjumper, and the Darkspark versus Matrix happens, with Optimus sending the Darkspark throughout the multiverse. And this would actually cause it to break through not only space and time, but actually break through transwarp space and end up in a splintered timeline of the Bayverse universe, or the Bayverse multiverse, if you will. Now, Lockdown seeing the Dark Spark come into his universe would have automatically wanted it, as this was his opportunity to not only bend space and time, which again would be infinite, but this also would allow him to invade Earth. Now you might say, where are the other Autobots in this timeline? And that's very simple. Remember, at the end of Dark of the Moon, Sideswipe was basically Optimus Prime's second in command at that time. So I do believe that when Lockdown invaded Earth, the Autobots would have responded under Sideswipe's command, while Optimus takes Drift, Bumblebee, and himself, and goes investigate the Darkspark crash site. During that time, Sideswipe, Mirage, Ratchet, and the Wreckers would have made quick work, all right, of the Cybertronian bounty hunters. Now you guys are probably also wondering, where do the Dinobots fit in this? And this is actually pretty simple. Now, I do believe Lockdown does capture the Dinobots like in the original, Transformers Agent of Extinction story. I mean, it was pretty much right then and there. Now, Lockdown was also planning to test the Darkspark's corruption like he did with Megatron. He even stated to Drift that he could use the Darkspark on him, but he's not going to because he changed his side so quickly. But again, Drift wasn't going back to his old ways because he actually found that the Autobot cause was actually noble. However, Lockdown had a key test subject in mind, and this would have been Grimlock. However, Lockdown doesn't see to himself because he's actually confident in his troops, which is actually is a bad idea. Now, I do believe that we would have had more Dinobots in this timeline. The reason why I'm saying this is because there was concept art for more Dinobots. There was supposed to be an Ankylosaur, a Parasaurolophus, and there was even a Brachiosaur or a Giraffe, a Titan Dinobot. So what I think would happen is Lockdown would tell his troops to bring him Grimlock. Using this opportunity, as soon as they free Grimlock, he goes ballistic and absolutely demolishes Lockdown and his troops and sets his allies free almost immediately. I mean, it'd be the perfect opportunity. Grimlock isn't stupid. He's intelligent enough to understand that, oh, they're going to free me to take me somewhere. So why not use this opportunity, right? And considering Grimlock was able to kill an enforcer mercenary, yeah, he's freeing the rest of his allies without any sort of trouble. By the way, this is artwork here. There's actually a Mosasaur, a Therizinosaur, a miniature Velociraptor, Dilophosaur, and I think a Tylosaur as well. But anyway, let's get back to this. I do think the Dinobots would have actually made their own way to the battlefield and actually assisted Sideswipe and the rest of the Autobots during the whole, Drift rescue scene. And I think that after that whole Grimlock mission, which is probably the only best part of the game here, Lockdown would have easily retreated like the original, seeing that as he failed, and he doesn't want the Autobots and Dinobots jumping him. And I mean, understandable, right? Now, Grimlock, seeing it logically and to be able to get his get back against Lockdown, would have easily teamed up with Optimus without having the need to a fight. This would lead to Sideswipe leading the leading the Autobots and the Dinobots, or Sideswipe and Slug leading the Dinobots and Autobots respectively against Lockdown's forces. They would have actually been able to take a portion of Lockdown's forces on, or at least distracted them to the point where Lockdown had to bring some of his forces in, including Leapers, to coordinate and pretty much, basically make a defensive play here. And I do think Lockdown's forces would have been led by Stinger, who was supposed to be Lockdown's second in command and was supposed to be a boss fight, but never got that to happen. And I do believe with, Stinger leading the mercenary forces, I guess you could say trying to protect the city, this would allow Optimus, Grimlock, Bumblebee, and Drift to go behind the lines while Sideswipe dealt with, Sideswipe and Slug and their respective teams dealt with Stinger and the mercenary army. So this would have actually been, it would have been a complete wash. You have multiple Dinobots and multiple Autobots working together in sync and just tearing through the the mercenary troops like they're absolutely nothing. This would then lead on to Optimus Prime going on to beat Lockdown like in the original. And I think, everything would have been A-okay. Maybe Lockdown runs into an Autobot ambush after leaving, after retreating without the Dark Spark, and he either gets captured or probably killed. I do think if that he ran into a Dynamite ambush, he would have been killed. There's no if, and, or buts about it. But anyway, you guys, this is what I think would actually be the accurate timeline for Rise of the Darkspark. It takes place during the timeline of Age of Extinction, but it goes way differently, and it's way more supportive of the Autobots, and we get what we should have had in the Bayverse movies. So anyway, please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I hope you all have a blessed day. Peace.